I'm nicodehaan, and welcome to Living a Primal Lifestyle, where we explore a return to a more balanced and natural wild world.
To recover our natural health and regain our rights and freedoms. And I'm Ellen Dahan.
And it's a beautiful day in Durango, Colorado right now, about 45 degrees, going up to maybe 50 or something today. And it's been chilly at night, but it's kind of like spring here.
Yeah.
Snow
is melting.
Yeah. So please subscribe to our YouTube or Odysee channels and hit the follow button, hit the like button, and help our channel grow. We also post on Facebook and LinkedIn, so you can find us there. And if you hit the link below the show notes, you can maximize your nutrition with products from Mother Earth Labs. These are products that we use to supplement our diet, so check that out. Now, we look at mainstream news stories about anti-aging, natural health, history, climate, as well as our freedoms, and we do our own analysis. All topics for today's show are in the show notes listed below in the description. Any questions or comments, you can reach me at nicodehaan@me.com. This is the link for Mother Earth Labs. And if you subscribe and hit the like button, we would certainly appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let's go on with the show here.
Yeah, it was a busy week that we had.
Yeah, I linked a podcast that I did with the Athletic Mom Project with Chandler, who was one of my students. And it was a nice conversation. We talked for over an hour and a half about various different subjects. You might find that interesting. Linked in the description below all the show notes. So check that out. Today we're going to start with... We're going to be talking about macronutrients. And of course, the three macronutrients are carbohydrates, fat, and protein. And it's kind of going to be an interesting conversation. So let's start with the first of what the recommendation is by our government. And this is the...
Remember the old food pyramid?
Yeah, we had the food pyramid, which was, if you look into the history of that, that was really brought about by people who were selling Kellogg's cornflakes.
Selling all the cereals and grains that were at the bottom that based the entire...
Yeah, and that was, I think, in the 1920s when they came with that. That's a different subject, but this is the current food plate. And
so now we went from a pyramid to a plate.
Yeah, much easier to understand, right? So it says here that the benefits of daily eating add up over time, bite by bite. Smaller changes matter.
So they suggest you start with...
More than half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables. And then they have a little tag here where you can learn more.
Which is interesting because if you actually look at the plate, that's not half.
Well, yes, it is. Fruits, vegetables, right there.
I know, but that's about a third. I mean, it's not it's a quarter at best. If you look at the divider,
vegetables are a little bit.
Oh, fruits and vegetables.
Fruits and vegetables.
Never mind.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, and then the second part is that vegetables make up half of the fruits and vegetables.
Of your fruits and vegetables.
Yeah,
so they want you to do half fruits and half vegetables. No, yeah. It's not even. It's more like a little over half vegetables.
Yeah.
And a little under half fruits. But
and
all together, half of you.
And then to make half your grains, whole grains, it says. So a quarter of your diet, when we go back up here.
Right to the plate.
They want you to eat the grains. And then at the very bottom are your protein foods. So vary your protein routine, it also says. So this is actually...
And then dairy is sort of set on the side.
Yeah, and dairy would be included in the protein.
Well, no, it's look at the plate.
Yeah, it's kind of at the side.
It's at the side. Yeah. So it's like an addition, a supplement to your diet.
And I think the reason they put that in there is because some people are allergic to dairy products, right?
Maybe.
So maybe that's why they put it in
there.
But maybe we're also allergic to a lot of the grains.
Well, yeah.
And maybe some of the fruits and some of the vegetables too.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the proteins, depending on the proteins you eat. So we're going to dissect this by going to, let's see, let me get into the right mode here. We got a week off, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
I don't want to hear it.
Okay, so let's go to the protein part here.
Okay.
So assessing protein needs for performance. And this is an article that I found. And these articles, we don't agree with everything on them.
No.
And that's why we want to put them forward, because most of the things you find on here is something that we've found over the last 20 or 30 years doing this, is that we don't agree with a lot of, and we want to explain
And
why.
there's a lot of other papers and research that do support our position.
Yes, certainly are. Yeah.
But,
So it says here that contrary to the hype that everybody needs more protein, most people in the US meet or exceed their daily protein needs. This is especially true for males 19 to 59. The dietary guidelines for Americans in 2020 to 2025 indicate that men in that age range exceed their protein recommendations, especially from meat, poultry, and eggs. Even athletes often get more protein than they need without supplements because their calorie requirements are higher. With more food comes more protein.
This is, where does protein come from? Well, the first thing they list is plant sources.
Yeah, the healthiest protein options are plant sources, they say, such as soy, nuts, seeds, beans, and lentils.
And then it says lean meat, skinless, white meat, chicken or turkey, a variety of fish or seafood. Egg whites and low-fat dairy are also excellent protein sources.
Yeah.
And we do subscribe to the theory that meat with the natural fat in it is much better for you.
Yeah, and we'll go
And
into
the
that.
skin of the chicken and the egg yolk is full of really healthy stuff. So
Yeah, so there's a difference between complete and incomplete proteins, and they say that proteins are made of 20 amino acids. Each plays an important role. The body can make 11 of these amino acids called non-essential, but the remaining 9 called essential proteins.
but not the
Right. Right.
Mhm.
A food is considered a complete protein when it comes to contains all 9 essential amino acids. And incomplete proteins contain some, but not all of them. An incomplete protein doesn't mean that it's a bad food source. It just means that you need to include complementary foods during the day.
In other words, you really need to combine proteins if you're trying to get a complete set of proteins in a meal.
Especially in the next paragraph, it kind of explains that incomplete protein sources often are plant-based. And here we're recommending, yeah, I'm shocked. Yeah. So such as nuts, seeds, beans, and whole grains are not complete. To make complete proteins, incomplete protein foods can be combined. Example of these, and they show peanut butter on whole wheat. Well, a lot of people are allergic these days to peanut butter.
Yeah.
Peanut butter I wouldn't consider as a great source. It may not be bad in certain instances, but oatmeal and hummus and pita bread and brown rice and black beans. The best probably combination of these things might be rice and beans.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's
thinking.
the most common thing. So you can see that if you're just eating brown rice or you're eating just white rice, it's not complete. If you're just eating beans, that's not complete. You really have to combine them. And that's why you see in cultures,
South American and Mexican.
And even Mediterranean diets include both of those things.
Also Asian, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So how much protein do you need? True or false? Bigger steaks equal bigger muscles. False.
False. The bigger the steak, bigger steaks do not equal bigger muscles, apparently.
True or false? Dairy.
Well, the one thing it says here is that although protein is necessary, extra strength training is what leads to muscle growth, not additional protein.
Yeah, the body can't store protein, so your needs are met by daily consumption.
Once your needs are met.
Yeah. True or false? 50% of daily calories should come from protein, and that's false. It says here that 10 to 35%. I'm thinking for the average human being, probably 20% is right in the ballpark there.
Right.
Athletes who really do a lot of exercise, especially lifting things, you probably want to increase that a little bit, but you can read about that.
Right.
Then true or false, is it best to eat protein throughout the day? Well, true.
That's true, but
yeah.
we've been talking about the fact that you don't want to be snacking.
Well, and that's the whole thing, right? Let me just get rid of this for a second. Whoops. The thing is, eating completely all day long doesn't really make a lot of sense.
No.
Our ancestors probably never did this. We eat only breakfast and lunch, or breakfast and dinner. We skip lunch because we're satisfied and we're happy.
We're not hungry.
Yeah, we're not hungry. So we don't eat a lot, but we do eat probably 20% of our diet does come from protein. And we try to find the best sources of protein. And our opinion is, through the research that we've done over the years, is that the best protein sources are probably, and the easiest to digest, are probably the meats from well-sourced animals that eat really good food. And these are
free range.
and they're ruminants. They're ruminants.
Mhm.
They're split hoof animals. So if you're talking about that, you're talking about deer, you're talking about cows, cattle, you're talking about bison, and all these grazing animals. You're also talking about pork, pigs, and related animals to that. You're talking about some
Chickens that are free range.
Yeah, so we like wild animals, and we like animals that are very good source. So they're out in the wild, pretty much, even though they may be fenced in. They're out in the sunshine. They're running around, finding their own food. They know what to eat instinctively. We don't have to put them in a barn, although in some instances they may be in the barn because it's so cold outside.
Well, at night they may go in the barn for shelter and protection from.
Here in Colorado, we see them roaming throughout all the pastures up in the high elevations and everything.
Oh, the cattle?
The cows, yeah. So
no, I was thinking of the chickens.
Oh, the chickens.
Yeah, no, the cattle and the horses and the various wild animals.
Yeah. So that kind of is weird that it would say it's best to eat protein throughout the day. I'm not sure exactly what they mean by that. True or false?
Well, what they're saying here is that eating a bigger portion of protein at one meal doesn't give you any more benefits. So you should eat small meals throughout the day. Apparently.
Yeah. Well, true or false is planning meals with 15 to 30 grams of protein is complicated. Well, it can be, I suppose, if you do it the way they're doing it here.
I like lunch because they said, oh, you can have an egg and a bean burrito, a glass of milk. Well, a glass of milk has the protein in it. And then black bean quesadillas have protein.
Yeah.
But then it says, here's the key sentence: boost the protein by adding chicken or shrimp. So, get some real protein.
Yeah. And here for dinner, they were a small chicken breast, 3 ounces, with a half cup of rice, a half cup of vegetables, amounts to about 25 grams of protein.
Well, there's protein and that's the problem, isn't it?
And that's pretty much the article there.
Yeah, it's kind of.
They talk about supplements a little bit. But
let's go to the next one. Why humans don't need dietary carbohydrates to thrive.
Yeah.
What we're doing today is kind of reviewing some of the stuff we've covered in the last 4 weeks. And
the last 10 years.
Well, just particularly that we specifically targeted the last 4 weeks.
Yeah. So what the mainstream is really telling us is that they want us to eat a lot of carbohydrates. If you look at the fruit and vegetables alone, they want half your calories just coming from that. And there are 3 macronutrients in here. And we've talked about the protein, and we know that protein is essential. The second one is the carbohydrates. And here's an article that says why humans don't need dietary carbohydrates to thrive. So you wonder why the food industry and the doctors and the medical industry is pushing to have us consume a macronutrient that isn't
essential. Beneficial and nutritious and
well, they may have some of those things in them, but they're certainly not essential. And the proof of that, of course, is the Inuit people.
Well, let's go through the article.
That used to be called Eskimos. So those people live in an area where
there are no vegetables and fruit.
No, and even in the summer months, they might find a few roots and a few berries here, but certainly you're not going to supply half of your calorie intake from carbohydrates up in there.
Mm.
And even if you look back in history, I think our ancestors never ate carbohydrates, because if you go out in the wild and try to find them, they're
Well,
very.
they ate some at some points in the year, depending what was in season.
I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just saying that in the wild, carbohydrates are very, very hard to find.
Right.
And you have to know what
So
you're doing.
it's
And they're a lot of them are poisonous too.
Yeah, and we talked about that a lot. The fact that fruits and vegetables contain natural toxins to protect themselves because they can't run away and they can't fight back.
Right.
So
here's a snapshot. When discussing carbohydrate restrictions, two fallacious
arguments mean arguments that are based on incorrect.
Yeah, related to the energy need of the brain and the sustainability of a ketogenic diet are often levied against the use of well-formulated ketogenic diet in practical therapeutic medicine.
So these are the two arguments that are not based on actual science and fact. The first one is the human brain burns 600 calories per day, and this translates to 150 gram per day glucose requirement to meet its energy needs. And the second one is no one can follow a ketogenic diet long term. So then it says in the peer-reviewed medical literature over the last 5 decades, these arguments against the safety and sustainability of nutritional ketosis have been proven false over and over again, most recently with the 2-year results of the Indiana University Health Study.
Which they link here. Published science has shown that ketones that are produced from either dietary fats or triglycerides, which are stored in our fat tissue reserves, are an excellent fuel for the brain. Further, we now know that these ketones produced by the liver also have multiple beneficial effects on the heart, kidneys, and other organs that appear to translate improved longevity.
Additionally, new research has highlighted that skeletal muscles, even those of competitive athletes, are not solely dependent on high dietary carbohydrate intake for glycogen replenishment and performance.
In addition to the fact that ketones are a clean burning fuel, producing fewer free radicals than glucose when used by the brain and other organs, the primary keto beta hydroxybutyrate can also function as a signal to activate genes that regulate our defenses against oxidative stress and inflammation.
How the body shifts its primary energy source from carbohydrates to fats and ketones is anything but simple. This process, which we've named keto adaptation, starts within days, but takes a considerable period of time to fully develop.
Yeah, and even after it is complete, the result is not an absolute exclusion of glucose from the body's fuel supply. Rather, the need and use of glucose is dramatically reduced, while at the same time, pathways that salvage products of partially metabolized glucose, which is
pyruvate and lactate.
Yeah, for recycling into fuel and other beneficial metabolic intermediates become more finely tuned.
And the result is that maintenance of normal blood glucose and muscle glycogen levels that can be sustained without the need for dietary carbohydrate intake.
Yeah, in fact, what really they're saying here is that it's a much more clean fuel that has less after effects, because carbohydrates burn so fast and they create free radicals. There's a lot of defenses, like you said earlier, in plants that are detrimental to our health. And your body has to get rid of these. And the fuel that fat supplies is just a lot easier for your body to handle. And in longevity studies, this is what they've been shown.
And they're saying, and they're again addressing the fact that the arguments are not valid, saying the brain does not, in fact, need glucose. It actually functions quite well on ketones. Stating it another way, the presumed requirement for glucose by the brain is a conditional need that is based on the fuel sources dictated by one's choice of diet.
Yeah, ketone suppressing diet, any diet supplying less than more than 30% of the energy, less
before more than 30% of energy from the combined intakes of carbohydrate and protein
Forces the brain to rely on glucose for food, correct?
for fuel.
For fuel, yeah.
Mhm.
It is true that some cells within the body do require glucose. For example, red blood cells, parts of kidneys, and the epithelial cells that cover the lens of the eye are primarily glycolytic because they lack their mitochondria and thus are dependent upon glucose to function. There's also partially true for the fast twitch muscle fibers, which have fewer mitochondria than the slow twitch muscles used for high intensity exercise like weightlifting and sprinting.
But in all of these cases where glucose is broken down to lactate, the body then has a choice. Cells with mitochondria can further oxidize the lactate to CO2 and water, or the body can recycle the lactate back to glucose.
Yeah.
Which is not what happens with the switch from burning carbs to burning.
Yeah, and here they have some studies that the brain can function on ketones, and then further on down the line, they talk about the reduced risk
of symptomatic hypoglycemia, which is the
associated
when
with
your blood sugar drops.
when your blood sugar drops.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then did you find? Keep going. There's a right there. Essentials of keto adaptation. It's highlighted on mine. It's not highlighted on yours.
Yeah, I don't know why.
What happened there? Yeah. Anyway, it says that there are 5 sources for the glucose precursors, and the breakdown of muscle to supply amino acids for glucogenesis, breakdown of dietary protein to supply amino acids for glucogenesis, glycerol released from the hydrolysis of adipose tissue, triglyceride, or dietary triglyceride, recycling lactate and pyruvate from glycosis, and acetone produced by the spontaneous breakdown of acetoacetate to acetone.
That can be used for glycogenesis.
Yeah, it's a little bit technical.
So the last source is a bit surprising, as it's actually a small but significant pathway for the production of glucose from fatty acids. The condition for and the amounts provided by these various sources of glycogenesis are shown in the following table. So they show you, the body has a remarkable way of supplying the glucose you need from fat and protein, and you really don't need the carbohydrates for that.
Right, and your body makes the glucose that it needs for the for your health and for the well-being of your systems. Then down further, it says why some. Yeah, keep going.
I'm trying. It's moving slow. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, there we go.
There we go. And there's why some experts still claim we need dietary carbohydrates. So it says, in addition to the commonly stated but flawed arguments for dietary carbohydrates that had been mentioned in the article, that the brain and other tissues are obligate carbohydrate burners and that carbohydrates are required for exercise, there are a number of other reasons often used to support the idea that we need to consume carbohydrates above levels that facilitate natural ketosis. And they mentioned the liquid protein diet debacle.
Yeah, with the publication of the book, The Last Chance Diet in 1976, a profoundly flawed diet with overt electrolyte and mineral inadequacies was promoted to the public, resulting in over 60 cases of sudden death reported to the CDC in the following years.
And once again, people jump to conclusions without actually identifying the true underlying cause.
Yeah, the other is...
It says there's absolutely no scientific basis for the claim that dietary carbohydrates are necessary to prevent the buildup of damaging levels of ketones.
Yeah. Then
there's a myth of adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
And then there's a thyroid dysfunction. And they're trying to blame impaired thyroid function on ketosis, but the science doesn't support it.
And then sleep patterns are disturbed by a ketogenic diet. And I think at first there is that.
There can be. I didn't
Yeah.
have that problem
No.
myself. And
I did it in the first week or so, and everybody adapts, I think, a little bit differently to the switchover. Sometimes I know some people that took about 30 days to adapt and they were fine. Some people take 3 months. I think the whole process, however, probably takes a year for your
right,
body to completely
completely
adapt.
switch
And
over.
this is why a lot of people try it and they say, this is not for me. I was
I,
hungry. I
you
was
know,
this.
I,
And
lo- I I'm constantly surprised by people who say, "Well, I did it for a couple of days. I didn't feel any difference, so I gave up."
yeah,
I mean, a couple of days is not going to do it. So, and there's the conclusions
well,
are,
before we get to conclusions, we have
Mhm.
to address the dietary fiber because this is something that's in the news all the time.
yeah. So it says there's
We need more dietary fiber than is possible in the ketogenic diet. It says there is now strong evidence that the short chain fatty acids produced from colonic fermentation of fiber also improves brain health. And it is indeed true that the combination of very high fiber intake plus adequate carbohydrate restrictions to sustain nutritional
Mhm.
ketosis is difficult to achieve without the use of purified fiber supplements.
But
But go ahead.
the article points out, the researchers have pointed out that the production of beta hydroxybutyrate can provide many-fold more short chain fatty acids to the brain than a very high fiber diet combined with an optimized microbiome. Thus, moderate level of fiber that one can achieve with a real food, well-formulated ketogenic diet should be more than adequate to obtain organ health throughout the body.
Yeah.
A lot of misinformation out there and misunderstanding about
Yeah, because we eat very little fiber. Once in a while, maybe once a week, we have a small piece of bread with oil
it.
and some
And
spices.
that's sourdough bread, which has been fermented.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's already started to break down.
And I think if we needed carbohydrates, people couldn't subsist up in the higher latitudes.
Right. They wouldn't be living in Siberia, for example.
Right. Yeah.
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 And then so it says the conclusion is that the need for dietary carbohydrates is often a topic of misunderstanding and misinformation. Some specific tissues in the body do have certain glucose requirements, but these are easily met by gluconeogenic sources within the body without the need for external dietary carbohydrate intake. There are also some people who claim a need for bread, but that's because bread has things in it that are kind of addictive
They sure are. I mean, you smell some bread and you want some. Right? I mean, for sure. It says here that fatigue, stress, impaired cognition, and reduced performance that are often used to argue for the need of carbohydrates are more aptly attributed to improper implementation of a well-formulated ketogenic diet, inadequate electrolyte replacement, and or insufficient time for keto adaptation.
And when used correctly, a ketogenic diet can be safe and sustainable therapeutic tool as well as a means to help promote wellness and performance.
Yeah, so I would recommend checking out the information in this because it's extensive. It'll give you a good idea, and you really do need to take time to um, to adapt. And that can take, I mean, if you've been on a high carbohydrate diet or a vegetarian, it may take you a while unless you're a vegetarian that's really smart and has adapted
Balancing
and
everything.
balanced every
Yeah.
single thing. And you're not just eating the 6 vegetables and beans and stuff that are available. You need to include a lot of variety and you need to really know what you're doing. And eating a lot of fermented foods and things like that to help you
Mhm.
process these things. But the next article is named Nutritional Health Information
Nutrition
Sheet
and
and Health for Health Professionals, and they talk about fats. So
yeah, this article was, again, we've talked at length about this for the last few weeks, but here, just to review.
yeah, fats are a subset of a class of nutrients called lipids, which also includes phospholipids and sterols. Usually when people refer to fats and oil, they're speaking of triglycerides, the most common form of fat in the diet. And triglycerides come in many sizes and varieties, but they all share a common structure, a backbone of glycerol, which is the
Which has the
three fatty acids that are attached to it.
Mhm.
All glyceride molecules are alike. The fatty acids may vary in two ways: length and degree of saturation.
So what are fatty acids? And then we've talked previously. Monosaturated fatty acids, which can be found in nuts, vegetable oils like olive, canola, and sunflower.
Yeah, the
And-
monosaturated fatty acids are one double bond in their structure.
And they're liquid at room temperature.
Yeah.
And we have,
Polyunsaturated fats have two or more double bonds in their structure.
they're also usually liquid at room temperature.
Yeah, and when you think of those, you think of like canola oils, any kind of the vegetable oils.
Let's see, polyunsaturated fatty acids can be either omega-6 or omega-3 fatty acids. Sources of omega-6 include nuts and liquid vegetable oils, such as soybean, corn, and safflower oils.
Yeah, we also learned in the past that the omega-6 are highly inflammatory, and the omega-3s are anti-inflammatory.
So
you
you
need
have
a balance of
you have sources of omega-3 fatty acids include fish, walnuts, flaxseed, soybean oil, and canola oil.
The problem with the flaxseed, the soybean, and the canola oils, they're all genetically modified at this point, so not good sources, and most of them are rancid even before they're sold.
Right.
Just because of the formation. They talk about fatty acids, and they do not have double bonds, so they're the simplest.
Saturated fat.
Yeah, saturated. That's what I said. They are concentrated in fats from meats and dairy products. They're the easiest to digest. They also include things like coconut oil, palm oil, and kernel oils. And they're usually solid at room temperature, and that's the difference right there.
Yeah.
And our ancestors instinctively knew that these sources of fats were the best for us. They've been vilified. If somebody shows you two sources of fat, one being the solid and one being the liquid, they're going to say, well, the solid, this is what happens in your body. They get solid.
Right.
And actually the inverse is true.
Right.
The ones that are liquid turn more solid in your body, and the ones that are solid turn more liquid.
Yeah, they're more easily digested.
Exactly. So that's the fallacy. And of course, we know what trans fats are. These are the ones that are highly, highly engineered
and processed and converting liquid fat to solid fat. And it's been banned in the United States.
Yeah, pretty much.
Since 2000, let's see, they said, due to concern about the correlation between the cholesterol and cardiovascular disease and trans fat, the Food and Drug Administration requires information about the trans fat content of foods on nutrition food labels. And since January 1st of 2006, the average consumption of industrial produced trans fat has significantly decreased.
Yeah. So what functions do fats serve? Triglycerides are mainly responsible for storing energy and insulating the body and the organs. They also transport vitamins that are fat soluble and contribute to the taste and feeling of being full after eating a meal.
Yeah, and what are the fat solubles? Or vitamin E.
Yeah, the omega-3s and omega-6s. There's omega-3s, they explain in here. Good sources, it says here, for these essential fatty acids include vegetable oils, which we know are really high in omega-6 oils.
No, you don't want that much omega-6.
Omega-3 that are the EPA and the DHA. They're the vitamin E, things like that. And the fatty acids that are abundant in fish, salmon, halibut, trout, all these fatty fish are the omega-3 fatty acids, which you want in your diet.
Very good for you.
What they do not mention in this article, as far as a good source of omega-3s, are beef.
Beef.
Yeah. And you don't want to talk about that.
No. Oh.
The 2015 to 2020 dietary guidelines for for Americans recommend limiting total fat to 20 to 35%. Now, we've talked earlier when we talked about how much protein we should have, that you're going to be doing about 20%, maybe up to 30%. So if you're not eating any carbohydrates, how much fat would you be taking? 70% or more.
Yeah, well, you'd
And
be
if you have
getting all
no-
your calories from meat and fat.
So if you're doing 25 to 20, it says here, to 35% of adults and 30 to 40% in children.
Yeah, it's interesting that they say that the fat, and we keep saying fat, we don't mean, the fake stuff. We don't mean the fried stuff. We mean the
I
natural
think if you're
fat.
frying in lard, it's
Yeah,
probably not a bad
but
idea.
that's the natural
Right.
fat
If you're using
derived
vegetable
from
oils, yeah.
derived from the animals or part of the meat you're eating or the skin of the
So
chicken.
no matter if you're eating carbohydrates, fat, or protein, you're going to want great sources of these. You want natural sources of these.
Well, and here it's very interesting because the article says, when does too much fat become a problem? And it's a substantial rise in the prevalence of obesity among children and adults has been observed. National statistics show that approximately 30% of children and adolescents and over 68% of adults are considered overweight or obese. And so the problem is not the fat. It's the processed foods,
It's carbohydrates.
the carbohydrates.
Because if you eat too much fat, well, it's hard to eat too much fat.
Yeah, because your body says, I'm done. I'm satisfied.
But it's very easy to overconsume carbohydrates because they make you hungry. Just pull out a bag of chips and you can go see.
Well, they make you hungry and they make you crave more.
Yeah, and especially the processed ones because they got the salt and the sugar on them. Right. So if you're on a type of diet that we're on, with about 20 to 25% of our calories coming from protein, most of the rest of it comes from highly good sourced fat, and very few of it comes. So we're really exceeding this 20 to 35% that is recommended by our government and by our dietitians. So I just want people to understand that the way we're doing it is very high fat, which means about 70%, maybe sometimes even 80%. But we're eating very little food because we're full. Because we get full very quickly and we're satisfied. Yeah. So.
I mean, it's not like we don't sit down and eat a plate of fat that we cut off of a piece of meat.
No, because if you're taking a normal piece of meat, just like
a ribeye,
or a ribeye probably has 60% fat. A New York strip probably has 50% fat. A piece of chicken with
a lamb chop
is probably
has a nice
50 or 60%.
A nice rind of fat on it.
Right. Even if you're eating a chicken and you exclude the breast, then you're eating the rest of it.
Eat the dark meat and the skin.
You're probably talking 40 or 50% comes from fat. So it's very easy to portion out, and you don't need to calculate anything. Just put a piece of meat that's healthy in front of you, and half your fat is already there. The rest of it you can use in the cooking method by adding lard or adding some sesame oil or you save the lard for breakfast, right? So when you make
when I make bacon, I save the bacon fat.
And bacon probably has 60 or 70% fat.
Oh yeah, bacon's very high.
Yeah, so.
But it's good. But just look out for the nitrates and the nitrites.
And they talk about the relationship between fat and cardiovascular disease. Now, when they talk about these things, you're not talking about the dietary fat that you intake.
No.
You're talking about what's on your body.
Right, exactly.
And how you get it on your body is a lot different than what they're indicating here. And because it doesn't come through your diet.
It says right here, although saturated fat consumption has shown no significant association with the incidence of cardiovascular disease, replacing saturated fat with unsaturated fat, particularly polyunsaturated fat, has been associated with reduced risk by lowering triglycerides and cholesterol. But then it goes on to say, studies have found no relationship between consumption of dietary cholesterol and levels of serum cholesterol.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. It's the first time I'm seeing some of these admissions, as it were.
Well, it's slowly creeping in, right? Because there's a lot of people on a carnivore, paleo, ketogenic type diet, excuse me. They also talk about the relationship between fat and cancer.
You just take a look at this stuff. It says, deep frying foods or charbroiling them until they have a burned surface may pose a risk to the consumer.
May.
Always may or might or could.
I think cancer would have been really prevalent in the old days when people are just putting a steak on the fire and they get.
Yeah, right. But there was no cancer.
But there was no cancer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Deep frying foods. We talked a little bit about that and charbroiling them.
I just
don't see a correlation there at all. And a relationship between fat and mental health. I think it's the
how do you control fat intake? Well, here's what they suggest: eat 7 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, and that's supposed to promote satiety, feeling full. And add a mixture of whole grain products to your diet. You're going to end up like a fatted calf. Replace fatty meats with skinless chicken. No, don't do that. And drink fat-free or low-fat milk.
Yep.
All of that. These are all natural fats that are good for you.
At the same time, here they say, what are some food sources for different kinds of fats? First thing they list is meat, poultry, and whole dairy products.
Well, but
coconut and palm oils.
But of interest to me is that it says diets very low in fat are generally not recommended because fat is often replaced with refined carbohydrates, which has generally been associated with lots of different problems in your system. And dietary fat consumption should be balanced instead of reducing total.
Yeah, so that really doesn't. And there's another thing to this too, which is they talk about foods that are high in fat. We can go over that a little bit.
Oh, I think we can.
So with new diet theories for weight loss emerging every day, the notion that all fat is bad has been hammered into individuals. In reality, however, fats are not the villains they have been crowned. Conversely,
fats play an essential role in your body by providing you with energy, supporting cell growth, protecting your organs, keeping cholesterol and blood pressure under check, and assisting your body with the absorption of vital nutrients.
So when you cut fat-rich foods from your diet, you end up depriving your body of what it needs most. To prevent this from happening, it is important to adequately consume dietary fats that are essential for maintaining good health. And here they list some of the
top veggies that are healthy, rich in healthy fats. I don't ever think of a vegetable as having fat in it.
Maybe an avocado.
Yeah, except for.
But that's a fruit.
Yeah, but it does say olives. Okay, we eat olives. We have a couple of olives with our breakfast just for fun to add as something. And then it says corn. Well, we don't eat. It's supposed there are vitamins and minerals in these various things. They say, but it's like 0.72 grams of potassium in 100 grams of collard greens. That is what you call a micronutrient.
It's interesting that in the article here under the fats, the really good fats, they're not mentioning anything about meat whatsoever. They'll indicate some
fruits and vegetables. That's what they're talking about.
Dark chocolate. And then a big article here is the top veggies that are rich
in fat,
and the top fruits that are rich in fat.
Exactly. And the point is that it's minuscule.
And then it says here, wrapping up, no major changes are needed to include food high in fat content in your diet. The problem lies within or herein. A major part of your current lifestyle is indulgence. See, it's all our fault.
And processed and junk foods, followed by extended periods of sitting.
So they all blame it on us and
not what's being provided to us.
So read the article, make up your own mind. Then this is an interesting new term that has come up, and I don't remember. We were watching one of the podcasts, and it's called a
Autophagy.
Autophagy is essential for a cell to survive and function.
It's your body's process of reusing old and damaged cell parts.
Get rid of the non-functional cell parts that take up space and slow performance. Destroy pathogens in a cell that can damage it, like viruses and bacteria. So autophagy plays an important role when it comes to aging and longevity. As a person ages, autophagy decreases, which can lead to a buildup of cellular junk parts, and in turn, the cells that aren't functioning at best.
So what they're saying is you can get a little clogged up with
Waste products, basically, is
in
what
your
happens
blood.
in your diet, your
Mhm.
dying cells. And this is a really important part that I want to stress to people, because what happens when you go on a calorie restriction? In other words, we eat usually at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning for our breakfast. Then around 3 or 4 o'clock, we eat our dinner. And then from then on, we don't eat anything else until the next morning. So we have a good 16-hour area where we're not doing a lot, except in the first few hours we're digesting food, because the food that we eat is not that hard to digest.
Right.
We're not eating a lot of the vegetables and breads, which take a long time. If you're eating the processed form of those, they actually go through the body pretty quickly, but they spike your sugar, so you're storing fat.
That's not good. Right.
Yeah. So what happens after the digesting process? Now our body can start rebuilding it. But if you're digesting food all night long, your body doesn't have the chance to actually rest. And when it's resting, it starts to repair. And this is where this buildup autophagy takes place. It's actually removing these things. Once your digestion has completely stopped and you haven't eaten for a while, your body starts tagging into these cells that are damaged and has ability to remove them. And in a modern society, this is what I believe the reason most people are sick. Most people have some kind of diseases that come on because your body is built up.
Well, your body's
so much
not
of this.
detoxing,
Right.
and it's not purging,
Right.
and it's not getting rid of what it doesn't need. And it says, can you induce autophagy? And it suggests, yeah, right there.
Okay.
When you can induce autophagy by stressing your cells to send them into survival mode. So they suggest fasting. Fasting means you stop eating for a certain amount of time, depriving your body of nutrients and forcing it to repurpose cell components in order to function.
Another one is calorie restriction. Restricting your calories means decreasing the number of energy units or calories your body consumes. Instead of depriving your body of calories completely, as with fasting, you limit them. This forces your cells into autophagy to compensate for those lost nutrients.
And they suggested switching to a high-fat, low-carb diet that changes the way your body creates energy. So that can also trigger autophagy.
So if instead of burning carbs or sugar for energy, it burns fat instead. And this switch can trigger the autophagy.
And then exercise. Exercise stimulates processes that increase the activity of the autophagy, and such as stressing your skeletal muscles. Exercise can induce autophagy depending on the type of exercise and intensity.
How long do you have to fast for autophagy to occur? And here, studies involving animals suggest autophagy may begin between 24 and 48 hours of fasting.
But that's not with humans, so we don't really know yet.
Well, it's pretty much that
Similar.
a 12 to 16-hour period is enough to start this, for sure.
And then the relationship between autophagy and disease, which we just discussed. Basically.
Yeah, so scientists once thought of autophagy as housekeeping, your cell's way of tidying up to survive and function correctly. Within the past 20 years, scientists have discovered that autophagy may also play an important role in preventing and responding to disease.
So they show the studies have shown that autophagy may be associated with cancer.
Yeah, junk accumulating in a cell may increase the risk of errors in the cell's genetic material or DNA. Genetic mutations or changes in the cells can lead to the cancer cells forming.
But it's not a clear-cut harmful or beneficial process concerning disease prevention or treatment. Some studies have shown that autophagy may prevent tumors from forming in the early stages of cancer, but other research showed that autophagy may encourage tumor growth by helping the cancer cells function more efficiently.
And I think they pretty much proved now that depends on the type of food that you're eating. In other
And
words,
the
your
type
diet.
of cancer.
Yeah, and the type of cancer too.
Mhm.
Most studies about the relationship between autophagy and disease haven't been performed on humans. They have been, a lot of them. They
Mhm.
just are not cited much. And
Well, don't confuse us with the facts. There's a certain element of communication control that doesn't want you to have certain information, and there you have it.
that seems like the case. I mean, read some of these articles and check them out for yourself and see if you can come up with the same conclusion that we have, that it's a lot easier. Of course, I think the thing that sells us on the type of lifestyle that we're doing, especially the eating part, is how we feel,
Yeah,
how we wake up in the morning.
it's
smiling.
amazing. It's amazing how good we feel. It's
And it shows up
I
in
just
the
never think
activities too.
about it because I feel good all
Yeah.
the time. And I have energy and my skin looks good and just everything.
Yeah.
And my hair grows like an inch a month. My hairdresser says, "Oh my
Yeah,
God."
it's pretty good for sure. So anyway, do your own research, check it out, read the articles, and make up your own mind. Also, check out that audio recording from the Athletic Mom Project
From Chandler's
from Chandler. Yeah,
podcast.
and yeah, I think you'll find it interesting, and I appreciate you sticking around. Thanks a lot.
Be well.
Bye bye.